10 months ago, I turned 40. And when I was 39, I asked myself a very simple question. What's your purpose in life? And what are you going to be doing about it when you're 50? So not when you're 40 in a month, but what does your life look like in 10 years? And how are you living out your true authentic self and your mission on this planet? And what I realized when I asked that question, I was really honest with myself, is a lot of the things that I was doing didn't fit in that box.
But what I wanted out of life has changed, but that I don't have to go down a certain path because the world says I have to. There's a lot of pressure, outside pressure, to be these certain individuals and things. As men, I feel like especially we position ourselves in those positions a lot. So that transition for me is rooted nearly in that and just shifting my focus on what actually makes me happy.
Hey y'all, Josh Tomioni with the Derelict Podcast. Welcome back. We're so glad you're here. Would you do me a favor? It will only take you a couple seconds. Whether you're listening or watching right now, will you head on over to YouTube and hit that subscribe button? It really helps us get this message to more and more people that we can help. Greatly appreciate all of you. Thank you so much for being here and enjoy the episode.
Welcome to the Derelict Podcast. For the disparaged, depleted, and delinquent souls trying to find our way, we're talking about the scary part of the journey, where we don't know how it'll end. Let's be free to face our fucking failures in real time as the most unadulterated, truest version of who we are. No sugarcoating. Welcome to the shit show, you derelict.
Guys, welcome to another episode of the Derelict Podcast. And we're going to do something a little different today, I think. We're going to do this combined little episode thing and just throw it out to both our audiences. I think it's really cool. And I was like, well, how are we going to do that? But I'm like, throw it up in the air.
You know what? We're going to figure it out.
Send it, right?
We're going to figure it out. I'll do myself.
There you go.
Josh Abandonato, Derelict Podcast. And I'm here in a new studio because Austin so graciously allowed us to record here.
Guys, Josh and I have I think are on a fairly similar path right now and some big transitions going on in our life. And that's where we're going to start. We're going to talk about transitions today. That's what you're going to hear.
So, maybe we should define this first, right? This is a relationship transition. Maybe it's a business transition, etc. It sounds like you're going through some right now. Yeah. I've been going through some this year as well.
Big life changes for sure. Yeah.
Do you want to start? Do you want to talk about yours at all?
Yeah. I mean, my transition is I can't share everything because I can't let the cat out of the bag on some things. But let's just say this: I feel like a lot of this transition for myself that I'm going through has been more really focusing on what makes me happy, and I've been leading for a really long time my life and why I choose to do certain things based off of what I thought was important, money, and generational wealth or success, and what is success and what does that mean? All of this has changed for me recently. Maybe over a course of time, certain aspects of that success in itself and what I wanted out of life has changed. And then also like understanding that I don't have to go down a certain path because the world says I have to. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of pressure, outside pressure, to be these certain individuals and things. As men, I feel like especially we position ourselves in those plots a lot, or those positions a lot. So that transition for me is rooted nearly in that, and just shifting my focus on what actually makes me happy. Does my career make me happy? Does podcasting make me happy? What do I love about those things that's making me happy, and how can I do that in a way that is not for someone else? Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
So I'm gonna be doing some major lifestyle shifts, and that's gonna involve changing paths of what I'm gonna do to support my family and where we're gonna go, and I'll talk to you more about that later. But yeah, that's my transition.
Appreciate you sharing
right
that. Yeah. I think I mentioned this to you in a text the other day when we were talking about what we were going to talk about today. Mm-hmm. And that is that You know, one of the things I talked about on one of these recent episodes on my podcast was about how every time anyone goes through any sort of major relationship transition, I really believe that they come to this T in the road, and there's two choices.
Mm-hmm.
You either pick health or unhealth, let's say, for an easy description.
Sure.
Unhealth, I think, is probably easy for everybody to imagine. Do I start drinking? Do I throw myself way too much into my work, workaholism? Do I get addicted to shopping? Do I go from, let's say, a relationship with a partner just to another one like that?
Mm-hmm.
You know, kind of that rebound just because I don't want to deal with my issues. It could be a plethora of different things for us to distract ourselves, not to stay present, etc.
Right.
The other option is health.
Mm-hmm.
And that is recovery, doing things that I need to do to heal, etc. And the reason I bring that one up is it really, I think it relates to what you were just talking about, in the sense that on that path, you have to do it for yourself. So you just mentioned this earlier, right? I've had a lot of experiences in my life where I thought I was going down a path of healing,
Mm-hmm.
and then I realized it was for somebody else.
Mm.
So when I was married, as an example, I did that a lot for my wife.
Yeah.
I've done it for my kids in the past.
Right.
I've done it for business partners in the past. I've done it for friends, a lot of different people. And one thing that I've learned in my life is that anytime I get onto a healing journey for someone else, it doesn't work.
Right.
Even my kids.
Can you give me what's an example of that? Can you give me an example
Of what a healing journey is?
No, what a healing journey where you're doing it for somebody else. Like in the past, can you
Sure.
recall a situation?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, I could just I can pick on my marriage because that's an easy one.
Sure.
So there were, you know, aspects of my life, aspects of addiction and unhealth and other things that I was dealing with in my marriage that never really came to the surface until things kind of just started imploding, so to speak. And then once I had the realization, because anytime anybody goes through that, so like this doesn't, again, this could be alcohol, this could be drugs, it could be
Right.
sex, pornography, hiring prostitutes, like whatever, shopping too much.
Sure.
I mean, anything that is I'm using to medicate some sort of pain that I have, which is a lot of different things.
Right.
Prescription drugs, huge problem in our country right now.
Yeah.
Right? Any of those things. The very first step is trying to figure out, is just having awareness of realizing, oh, this is happening. You know, instead of me just staying present with you right now, I'm checking out my mind, or I'm thinking about what's on Instagram,
Right.
or I'm really hoping that like somebody just comes over and waves at me. Or, I mean, we're in your shop, so you're hoping that like some barista comes by and like gets your attention, so you can maybe take a break for a second because you're zoning out because our conversation's not interesting or whatever.
Sure.
I'm not saying you're doing that. I'm just saying
No, I get what you're saying.
those are things that happen, right? And for me, that's one of the most difficult things for me to do, is to try to stay present in that emotion, in that difficulty. So going back to my marriage, once I actually had the awareness that I was addicted to some things and I was letting them take over my life instead of just living in a healing journey, my first initial reaction was, well, I'm going to heal these things and get better for my marriage, which isn't a bad thing.
Right.
You're married. I mean, it's good to work on your marriage, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's rooted in good.
Absolutely. I mean, I had all the best intentions, but then at least for me with my story, well, what happens when the marriage ends then? And what I found out really quickly is that when my marriage ended, I was like, oh, I was doing all that for the marriage. I wasn't doing it for me. And then it was almost like a light switch of like, well, I'm not interested in doing it anymore.
Right.
Because I was doing it for the marriage. I wasn't doing it for me.
Yeah.
And man, I think it's really hard to be honest about that with yourself
Yeah. No, for sure.
and to really be able to see it.
For sure.
I have a ton of blind spots and filters and everything else that I don't see.
Yeah.
I have to have people speaking into my life all the time that are like, what about that? Are you really doing it for that reason? Are you really doing it for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And this is, maybe I should clarify something too. And then I want to hear your thoughts on this also. But I think one thing that I want to clarify also is that this is not I'm just going to solely focus on myself and be this selfish, egotistical, narcissistic piece of shit. That's not what I'm talking about either.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what I'm saying.
Right.
What I'm saying is, how do I live out my most authentic self so that I become the best self for myself and those around me?
Yeah.
But it can't be, well, how do I do something in order to make my wife happy or to make my kids happy or to make sure that they're living a good life? So you actually just made a good example earlier.
Yeah.
There's a difference between privacy and vulnerability.
Right.
So let's talk about that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
You can be vulnerable, but still be private.
Mm-hmm.
Like you were just vulnerable a little while ago, talking about some of the transitions in your life that are coming up and everything else, but you were still private. You didn't give all the information.
Sure. Yeah. No. I agree. A good point. Yeah. Thanks for pointing that out. I think a lot of the changes that I've made recently have not necessarily been to save my marriage, but I don't feel like I don't know. It made me think when you said that. I'm like, well, did I make these changes for my marriage? I've never thought about it that way. But I also don't not want it to work.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But I also think that the changes that I made were not changing who I am or who I want to be. They were just being healthier, bettering my overall me, But yeah, dude, you got I'm thinking now.
I can tell.
It's got me stumped because I'm like,
It's
is that a bad thing that I wanted to do that?
Well, so I don't think it's about intent necessarily. I think it's about order.
Okay, so what comes first? Let me rephrase it. What comes first?
Well, what comes first is, if I can't take care of myself, I can't take care of anybody else.
Right.
It's overly cliche, but it's the whole oxygen mask on the airplane thing.
For
right?
sure.
Same thing. But why am I doing it?
Mm-hmm.
Am I doing it because I just want to live a more authentic version of myself and I want to become a better human being and this is the next level of my development? Or am I doing it because I'm trying to fix something?
Right.
I'm trying to fix something in my marriage. I'm trying to fix a relationship with my kids, etc.
When you got a divorce, you realize, well, I don't want to do any of this. I don't want to change any of this anymore. So can I ask what you were changing? What do you feel in particular? What changes were you making to yourself that you realized you didn't want to change after you got divorced?
Yeah, you can ask that question and I'm going to answer it, but I'm also going to go back to something that you said earlier because you referenced alcoholism.
Uh-huh.
So let's just talk about 12-step for a second.
Okay.
One of the things that people find when they enter into a 12-step program for whatever it is, again,
right.
There's a plethora of things it could be for, is that the program never works if they're doing it for someone else.
Mm.
It only works if they're doing it for themselves.
Okay.
Because if I'm not working on my own individual recovery, then
right.
it's not going to work.
Yeah.
And so what was your original question though? Back to my marriage.
What was it specifically that you were changing about yourself, or what changes were you making, that you realized weren't really something you wanted to change after you got a divorce?
There was a plethora of changes. Probably the best way of me describing this whole thing was that before that happened, I really lived the majority of my life as not an entire chameleon, but very codependent in the sense of I want to make sure everybody else around me is okay.
Mm-hmm.
I want to make sure they feel okay so that I feel okay.
Right.
And I want to put on this, whatever this front is, whatever this face is, whatever this mask is, in order to appeal to whoever I'm in front of. I was very much like that in a lot of ways. And you can't be happy, from my experience, you can't be happy when you're living like that, because it's really hard for your authentic self to come out if you're just constantly trying to figure out well, how do I put on the next mask for whoever?
Mm-hmm.
At least a part of both of our businesses involves that because we have social media.
Yeah.
Like, what clip am I going to put out for this episode? What clip are you going to put out?
Mm-hmm.
What sort of light is that going to put me in? What sort of light is it going to put you in?
Right.
Is it a light I feel comfortable with? Am I uncomfortable with that thing that I just said like 10 minutes ago that I'm still thinking about, that I'm like, I should probably edit that out? Right?
Yeah.
I mean, and we both have that power because we edit our own episodes and we're like, cut that. I definitely don't want that out there anymore.
Sure.
I thought I did. If I have an addiction, happy to say this publicly.
Yeah.
First of all, I think we all have addictions. So I'm an addict. You are. Everybody is. My firm belief. The only thing addiction is something that, again, I want to do that I have a hard time letting go of because I don't want to feel a certain way.
Yeah.
So for you, for a while, it was alcohol, it sounds like.
Social media.
Social media easily can be on that list. You know, I've had struggles with a lot of different things over the years. I would say, though, that the number one thing that I still have a difficult time with, and definitely was true in my marriage, was validation. Just
you needing to be validated.
Yeah. Just addicted to validation, man. Just like, I want my wife to be okay with everything that I'm doing. I want my kids to be okay. I want my friends. I want my viewers. I want your viewers. I want you.
Yeah.
I want your producer. Like, I just want everybody to just validate. Not because, I mean, I'm definitely insecure at times. It's not necessarily just insecurity. It's more just, I just want the validation.
Have you ever thought about why that is?
Yeah, absolutely.
Why do you think that was that you're do you still feel this way?
I do.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Why? Like, why do you feel the need to be validated? I'm asking you this as I feel this way.
Totally.
Equally strong.
So I think every addiction is born out of insecurity. Mm-hmm. Every single one.
Sure.
And insecurities generally are fears. You know, some people call it anxiety.
Fear of people not liking you or thinking that you're doing the right thing. Like, I have a massive fear of disappointment. So, which is weird because, you know, even like I don't know, just like approval, like wanting like to make people proud or make people happy with you. What the fuck is going on out there?
A lot of sirens, man.
It's driving me nuts. I'm like trying not to think about it, but I can't not fucking think about it when every 3 seconds there's a goddamn siren that comes out.
I've been thinking about it the whole time too. If it makes you feel any better, yeah.
Like, do I stop talking now? Like, it's so distracting. That's why I need one of those rooms like you got. Anyway, validation. Yeah, I feel that super.
And I, you know, you run the Failure podcast. I talk about failure a lot on my podcast as well. It's not even necessarily fearing failure. I often find that I fear success more than I fear failure, which is a whole nother topic.
Interesting.
But
were you, as a kid, do you think it had anything to do with your childhood, how you were raised, who you hung around?
Of course. Yeah, absolutely. It always does.
Just trying to make people proud?
Yeah, a lot of it goes back to, I was surrounded by several codependents and bipolar people.
Okay.
And a lot of times those people go together. If somebody's living with somebody who's bipolar, they often become codependent because they have to associate their actions and responses based on whatever craziness you're going to find next.
Sure.
Because either the person's being manic or they're being depressive, which is why bipolar used to be called manic depressive. Like, they're either being manic or they're being depressive. And either way, as a codependent, I'm like, I got to figure out where you are to try to make you okay so that I feel okay, so I feel safe with you because you're kind of crazy. Right?
Wild, dude.
And there's a lot of that in my just extended family and everything else growing up.
That would fuck you up.
Yeah. So I really learned to, again, this is where the chameleon comes from. Mm-hmm. I really learned to be like, okay, where are you? Is it safe? How do I make this safe for myself?
Yeah.
I think it's also why I became a salesman, honestly.
Good point.
Yeah. I'm like, I could sell anybody anything.
Make a great salesman.
Because I'm like, I'll just meet you wherever you are.
Sure.
Let's just do this.
Dude, that's crazy, actually. My wife calls me. She'll say, like if we're having a deep conversation, or sometimes if I'm giving her a compliment or trying to explain something, she'll say, "Are you salesman Austining me, or are you Austining me? Like, what are you?" Because I can be very convincing. I'm good at that. You know, that I think that's why I'm a good speaker.
I'm trying to let the guard down, man. It's just like,
but it's a weird thing to think about, wanting people's approval, because I talk a lot about not caring what people think. That's why I enjoy being so vulnerable, because like I personally like I'm trying to understand when the timing of things. Like I think it's okay to share most anything under the right umbrella. And it's you know, but either way, I fight with that for sure. Am I just saying this to gain approval? Mm-hmm. Did I even, that podcast I put out of me just talking about myself, I watched it again and I was embarrassed about it. I'm gonna leave it out, but I'm like, man, like I got some good response, I got some okay response, but ultimately I watched it again and I didn't even make it. I made 2 clips out of it and I was like, I'm gonna bury that, because by the 3rd time watching it, I was like, man, I was just having a moment. Did I need to put that out?
2 things on that. Number one, I just want to relate to you very much so, because like I just told you, I did 2 episodes on my breakup and it was brutal. So one of them, I had my friend come and host, you know, and she asked me questions and such. And then the other one I did by myself. 2.5 hours of me talking about this. So just emotional toll of going through that. And here's the thing. The first one I did 4 days after I broke up. Second one I did a month after. And then when they came out, it was 2 months after. Mm-hmm. A lot of my opinions, thoughts, etc. changed from those time frames.
Right.
From 4 days to a month to 2 months. To where, you know, when they just came out the last couple weeks, I was like, do I still want these to come out?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if I necessarily even agree with this. And now somebody's going to hear me, like this lady who texted me, and they're going to think that I'm all down and it's this difficult time. Like I totally, it feels very similar to what you're saying. But here's what I would encourage you with, and I'm going to encourage myself with. It was very real in the moment. Mm-hmm. And you were as honest and authentic and vulnerable as you could have been in the moment.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Because we all change.
Right.
And one of the hardest lessons I've ever had to learn in my life on this topic is a therapist said this to me years ago, and it's always stuck with me. He said, you don't have any control, and therefore you have to allow everyone to have their own narrative of you. There's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
You can try to manipulate it on social media, or you can try to manipulate it the way that you text or call people, or if Sales Josh or Sales Austin comes out, right?
Sure.
But at the end of the day, people are going to make their own decision about you, just like they are with me, just like they are with everybody else. And there's absolutely nothing I can do to control that. Mm-hmm. Nothing. So the sooner I can just give that up and just realize that I'm powerless over that narrative, the better it is for me.
Yeah. Yep. No, that's a great point, man. It's a phenomenal.
And it's easier for me to do that usually with strangers. Mm-hmm. Right? Like somebody that makes a comment online or something, I'm like, whatever, I can get past it. But then if it's a close relationship or, you know, a spouse or a girlfriend or a really close friend, it sometimes digs a little deeper because I want their validation.
Right. It's just hard to, it's hard to, I think piggybacking off what you said, it's a season, right? And on playing devil's advocate for myself, I'm glad that I was able to have that out there, and I know that it's going to help someone. It has, I'm sure. But I don't, I have this fear of that then becoming a defining moment of me. And I need to realize that it's not, you can be a package deal just because you have a downer moment. That's a real fucking thing. Like, happens to people more often than maybe it might me. And one thing I've been working on a lot is understanding the wave, of life, right? And the ups and the downs and, pivoting and the transitions that we go through, and understanding it's I've worked really, really hard on my mental stability over the last 12 months. Since I quit drinking, it was a catalyst to me making all these decisions to make wiser, healthier decisions. Cold plunging, getting outside, walking, reading, all of these very simple yet, pivotal moments in my life. And what that's helped me with is being more mindful and kind of looking at my life from an outside scope and understanding that what's happening right now might not be forever. And recognizing
When is it
the
ever
lows,
forever?
right?
Yeah.
Recognizing the second that you're feeling depressed, or that something sparks at you and goes, you have the panic or the anxiety or whatever, like, in the moment, it's really hard to see outside of that. So I've been really, really focusing on understanding that this is a wave. Ride the wave, sleep on it, drink a glass of water, read 10 pages of a book, talk to someone, think about something else for a minute, like, because everything seems so heavy and hard when you're in that storm, But
No emotions are forever.
exactly.
And again, going back to 12-step, this too shall pass. They
Yeah.
say it all the time.
Yeah.
Because what I've had to learn, because I agree with you, and sometimes these waves also feel like tidal waves, like you can't fucking get out of them,
Can't breathe. Yeah.
right? But they always pass. Like, no one's happy forever. No one's sad forever. No one's grieving forever. I mean, but in my life, what I've done historically is I've fought them when I don't want to feel them.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, I don't want to feel this.
You run, or you blanket, or
I could avoid it. I could medicate it, right? Whatever it is, I just don't want to feel this. And every time I've done that, man, when that emotion comes back, it's 100 times stronger.
for sure.
And then 1,000 times stronger, and then 1,000,000 times stronger. So I've learned that.
I tried therapy for a little bit.
What about meditation?
I haven't tried meditation. It's very, I do think the closest thing I get to meditating is doing, which I've been doing probably for the last 30 days, maybe 2 months. I've tried doing the Wim Hof breathing method. You ever heard of that? So I do that. Not once a day, maybe once a week. Probably should do it more, but I enjoy that. That's probably the closest thing that I can get to it. You meditate?
In non-traditional ways, yes.
Okay.
Because I found that most of the traditional ways I've tried have not been helpful for me, to be honest with you. So one way that I heard not that long ago is, I shouldn't say not that long ago, it was a while ago. I don't remember when it was. It doesn't matter. Why does it matter when I heard this? One of the most simple ways of meditating that I've ever heard, that's a better way of saying it, is literally just focusing on your breath and just breathe in, breathe out.
Mm-hmm.
Breathe in.
It's literally exactly what the
Breathe out.
friggin' Wim Hof breathing method is, bro.
That's all it is. Or what you can add to that is saying words. Like I heard this one recently where I am calm. I am confident.
Oh, interesting. I like that.
I am secure.
So how often are you practicing
good.
these things, like, by yourself, though? Are you doing this often?
As opposed to with other people?
Well, no,
do you
just
mean?
like, I like, people talk, like, do you only do this when you feel a certain thing? Or do you think it's one of those things that you should implement habitually into your life? Like waking up in the morning, drink a cup of coffee, wake up in the morning, try meditation, because that sets a tone for your day. Like what's your recommendation with that?
Well, I have a morning routine that I'm pretty consistent with that I do in the morning that involves a little bit of meditation.
Yeah.
It involves just like writing a few things that I'm grateful for, writing something that I'm looking forward to happen. I mean, so I'll just tell you a couple examples. 3 things I'm grateful for.
Mm-hmm.
1 thing that I'm looking forward to during the day. A few moments of meditation
Yeah.
or prayer or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
Just different consciousness, getting out of my own body, making sure that my phone's not in front of me, I'm not on social media, etc. And several other things. But that helps me with the consistency of starting my day. I would say, though, what helps me more is I'm in a process of trying to train my brain that when it gets triggered, which you mentioned earlier, that when it gets triggered, that's where I go.
Okay.
I don't go to freak out. Before I get to freak out, when I feel triggered, I go to, okay, focus on your breath for a second. You'll notice I've closed my eyes several times in this episode because sometimes this helps me just recenter for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, getting up to walk to the kitchen to get a glass of water.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I get it. Interesting.
That's been helpful for me, at least.
Thanks for sharing that.
It's
I like
also
your
helpful
routine.
for me, to be honest with you, to have really simple things like, dude, I mean, I'm fucking ADHD up the wall.
Mm-hmm.
So like me trying to concentrate on anything is really difficult. So if I can have really simple things that my brain just automatically goes to, it's helpful for me.
We wanted to talk a lot about transition on this, and I feel like we've gone off the beaten path often, which is fine.
It's good.
Can I ask you another off the beaten path question?
Sure.
How often do you question who you are, and how often are you making changes on that version of yourself? Or
I question who I am every day. I don't
Yeah.
think there's ever a day that goes by that doesn't. I've gotten better at believing what I think are the deep truths about myself, about who I really am, and trying to remind myself of that.
mm-hmm.
For me, one thing that's helpful for that is saying it out loud. And this is not, I'm burping into the microphone.
Me too, brother. It's okay.
It was that smoothie earlier. This is not like verbal affirmations in front of the mirror. Like that stuff is, I don't know, it's just too cheesy for me. I've tried it. It doesn't work real well. But one thing that I've noticed about myself, and I've actually really noticed this since I started the podcast, and maybe you've noticed this when you're editing your podcast, there's something about hearing my own voice that's actually really helpful for me. I'm like, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah.
Right.
So what I found is, even though I journal and I'll write things down, sometimes just saying it out loud is really helpful. So what I'll do sometimes is I'll journal a page and then read it to myself and record a voice memo
Oh, that's cool.
so I can listen to it later.
Okay.
Like, this is how you're feeling today, 2 months after your breakup, and here's the reason why you don't want to be with your girlfriend, blah, 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 blah. And then I have a voice memo now where, like, when I'm like, oh my God, I miss my girlfriend and everything was perfect and I have rose-colored glasses on, I'm like, oh, voice memo.
Right. It's weird how your brain can like just be in, I don't know, just like totally different places at different times.
It is. And I'm a verbal processor, and I don't know if this has something to do with it, but I have to get shit out of my head in order for it to clarify, because I spend a lot of time by myself and a lot of time up here. And if I just let this go, it'll go to crazy places, brother.
Yeah.
It just will. And I have to sometimes just make a phone call to a friend or just voice memo myself and just get the words out, because there's something about the auditory process of hearing it through my ear after it comes out of my mouth that does something different than it just staying up here.
Are you talking about like negative self-talk when you say
could be.
dangerous places?
That could be it. Yeah, for sure.
What do those dangerous places look like?
Usually for me, it's negative mindsets and negative beliefs about anything.
Yeah.
About why I can't do something, or about why I'm a piece of shit, or about why I failed at something and I'm never going to get any better, or about why I'm not succeeding at something. Or, I mean, I think probably all the same stuff everybody feels, right? I don't know.
Yeah, probably. But I feel like most people don't talk about that.
No, of course not.
Most people don't
not fun
talk
to
about
talk about.
the dark places that you go to or you can go to. So this transition that you're going through in life, what is this transition? Why? What are you transitioning in?
Dude, I feel like it's been a whole just year of transition for me, brother. I mean, I turned, so it was even the reason I started the podcast and my coaching company and everything else that I'm doing right now. So, I mean, I can tell you a couple things, but bottom line, as of, today, about 10 months ago, I turned 40. And when I was 39, I asked myself a very simple question. And my question was, what's your purpose in life and what are you going to be doing about it when you're 50?
I love that.
So not when you're 40 in a month, but what does your life look like in 10 years? And how are you living out your true authentic self and your mission on this planet? And what I realized when I asked that question, I was really honest with myself, is a lot of the things that I was doing didn't fit in that box. Specifically work-wise. Not that I'm completely getting out of the career that I've been in most of my life. I'm still keeping it. I own a financial planning company.
Right.
And I'm still keeping that company, and I'm still doing coaching with clients and everything else that I've been doing for a long time. But there are elements of what I'd been doing and elements of the company that I don't frankly enjoy doing. And I haven't for a long time.
Yeah.
And I've been doing it for 18 years too. So that adds to it.
That's a long time.
Where I'm like, I know, and I'm not even that old, right?
Wow.
And there's just aspects of it that I'm like, this is not why I'm on this planet. So what elements of this business are why I'm on this planet and what elements aren't?
Yeah.
And I'm at a point in my life right now where I don't give a shit about the money side of it. I need to make money and I need to provide for my family and everything else. But I'm not doing this to become a millionaire, billionaire, whatever, an heir. I'm doing it because I'm 40 and the time is now ticking away. And I get that I'm only 40. I'm in good health and everything else, so I could live another 80 years. I don't know. But man, I'm just fucking done doing anything that I don't feel is the reason I'm here. So when I got to that point, the answer that I gave myself, because it's the answer that's always been there, is that I realized one of the very first memories that I have, I was in preschool and I was just helping out this little boy that was getting picked on. And then I realized that's my entire life, helping boys and then men grow into their next stage of maturity, their next stage of manliness.
Yeah.
And frankly, in a world right now where a lot of masculinity is looked at as bad or evil or chauvinistic or toxic or whatever word you want to use, I think we've lost a lot about what healthy masculinity looks like. And there's a few voices out there. I'm not saying there aren't any. There are a few really good ones or really strong ones. But I'd say the majority of them are really, really bad.
Right.
So I realized, I was like, well, I'm trying to live a more authentic version of myself. I've been on a healing journey for the last 6 years. I want to teach other men how to do the same thing. And I was like, how do you do that through a financial planning company? You don't.
Yeah. Right.
But am I teaching my clients how to be more authentic versions of themselves and the best use of their finances? Yes. So I can keep doing that.
Yeah.
But really what I want to do and what I am doing now is the reason I started the podcast and the reason that I have my coaching company now is to be able to help men, specifically men going through transitions. Like right now, the most men that I'm working with are the ones that are going through divorce, some sort of a big relationship transition where I have a lot of experience. I have a lot of things that I failed at when I was doing it. And now I feel like I can be a guide to try to help them along. And it's not because I have all the answers, man. I definitely do not.
Yeah.
I mean, listen to my podcast. Like I don't have a lot of answers.
It's okay to not have all the answers.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that actually makes me more approachable for men that are going through this thing. Because I'm not coming along saying, like, I will tell you all the different things, but I can help you save a shit ton of money. I can make sure that you have more time with your kids. I can make sure that you don't go off the fucking rails in your mind like I did when I went through my divorce. I can make sure that you don't fuck up every other relationship that you have and your business and everything else, because that's what happens when guys go through divorce.
Yeah.
because it's so overwhelming and debilitating. You're talking about being numb. Dude, there's nothing more numbing that I can think of was when I went through my divorce. It just disables you. It's so intense. It's so intense. And it's not just that, it's men going through other transitions, whether it's business, etc., where, you know, to talk about the Failure podcast, like one of the reasons I love your brand and what you're doing is that my failures have defined me only because of what I've learned from them and the healing that has come from them. Because the biggest healing that I've ever had in my life has always come from some big fuck up. Every single time.
Yeah.
It's not when like life is going amazing.
It's true, man. No, for sure. But thank you for sharing that. And I'm sorry that you had to go through that moment in your life.
Oh, I appreciate that. And that wasn't this last year. So going back to your original question, when I turned 40, it was, well, first of all, when I turned 40, like I had all these health problems just pop up. And people have been telling me this for years, and I've always been looking forward to my 40s, and then all of a sudden I got all these health issues. So I had to look at that.
Yeah.
I had this relationship transition of this girl that honestly I thought I was going to be with the rest of my life. We were there for 2 years. We had a really great relationship. Things happened, whatever. That happened. Started the podcast, started the coaching company. It's just been one transition after another.
Yeah.
Transitioning part of my financial business right now.
Jared, if you're listening, bro, I love you. Jared DeAnda is his name, and he's just this very, very outgoing, real, authentic character. He's a announcer for things like Nitro Cross, Formula Drift. You know, he announces for Hot Wheels, like Rockstar, all these big companies, right?
Cool. Yeah.
And anyway, very like real dude. He's a real authentic dude. And we'll shoot you straight. And he got me because I did that. And that, by the way, I don't want you to think that's what I was trying to do right there either. It was a gotcha at all.
You're doing it right now.
No, I'm not. I want you to know I love you, and I didn't mean it in a way at all.
I do. I know that.
But he said to me, he goes, I was trying to validate this point, man. He just got me so hard, and it made me go, son of a bitch. Like, he's fucking right, man. This guy, this character who I look up to so much, this man is like, he's like checking me right now, like telling me not to second guess my own opinion because you don't have to validate it to anybody else
100%
other than you. You know what I mean? Like you know who you are. You know what you meant by that. He's like, leave it at that. And I was like, I didn't even know what to say, bro. I was just like, this is crazy because I do that all the time. And even talking to you today, I was able to explore this validation point of myself that I never really thought that I had, but or never thought about until you said it. And I was like, wow, I do the same fucking thing. And then I watched you do that. I was like, you know what? That's really crazy because
I love that.
I literally, I can't help it, man. It's out of my fear of disappointment for people. It's out of my fear of like somebody thinking I meant something when I didn't. You know, I didn't. I have to be careful with my words, right? And I think that also goes into it. Is being careful with your words, really being mindful with what you speak on and how you speak things. Because I find myself saying something and going, shit. That could be taken so many different ways. I have to correct that, but character. You know, it boils down to character. It boils down to, you know, the because I never would have thought that. You needed to correct yourself right there. I knew exactly what you meant. But it's this weird narrative, man. I can't, and it's a practice like anything else.
It's true.
Yeah.
Appreciate you bringing that up.
Yeah, dude. That was cool.
Can we go back to something you said a little bit ago?
Yeah, let's do it.
So let's go back to your whole religious versus spiritual thing. We're going to unpack this for a second.
Let's do it. I love this topic.
All right. So this is something I've learned a lot over the last several years. I firmly believe that everyone is spiritual, and I believe we live in a very spiritual world. I think where a lot of people get uncomfortable and there's trauma and people get triggered and everything else is what religion has, done to the world.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. A lot of good, a lot of bad, not a whole lot in the middle. It's either good or bad, usually. Some of the best things that have ever happened to the world are because of religion. Some of the worst things that have ever happened to the world are because of religion. Agreed? So let's take that out for a second.
Mm-hmm.
I firmly believe that even every atheist is spiritual. And I believe that they believe that they're spiritual. They just don't want to admit it.
Yeah.
And here's what I mean by that. What I've found in the last couple years in my life, and this has nothing to do with circumstances. So I'm not saying if something bad happens to you circumstantially that has anything to do with this. I'm saying basically every problem that I've had, not circumstances, but every problem I've had or every problem I've allowed myself to have has been based on one of two things. My broken relationship with myself, or my broken relationship with my higher power. And I'll use higher power. You could use God. You could use universe. You could use whatever makes you feel comfortable.
Yeah, I said universe for a really long time. I just say God now. I don't.
Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. I think it's the same thing. Is my point here.
True.
So I don't care if you're, Christian, atheist, Muslim, whatever, listening to this podcast. Your thing is still the same thing.
Yeah.
We're just calling it something different for the purpose of this conversation.
Yeah.
And where I think pretty much everyone's problems break down are those two relationships. Now you're noticing I'm not saying anybody else. I'm not saying spouse. I'm not saying family. I'm not saying friends. I'm not even saying the people that surround yourself. Because think about this, Austin. If you were living out your most authentic self every single day, and you absolutely loved yourself and had a great relationship with yourself, and you had a great relationship with God, higher power, universe, what problems would you have?
None.
There would be no need for validation from anyone ever because I validate myself and God validates me.
Mm-hmm.
There'd be absolutely no insecurity. There'd be no times where I would have to come over here and preface something that I'm going to say because I'm insecure or whatever's happening that I don't even realize, like what just happened a few minutes ago. So going back to the spiritual conversation, that's what I would encourage everybody to listen to, people that are watching and listening right now. Think about that. Think about your relationship with yourself and your relationship with your higher power right now. Because I think that if you were to link some of those missing chains, at least this has been true in my life, if you link some of those missing chains, problems start disappearing.
Yeah.
And again, this is not circumstances. I'm not saying if you're living in a war zone right now, the war is going to go away.
Right.
But I'm saying your experience of that war zone is going to be dramatically different if you have a great relationship with yourself and your God.
Mm-hmm.
I talked a little bit ago on the podcast of Viktor Frankl and his book, A Man's Search for Meaning.
Right.
And for anyone that doesn't know about that, excuse me, he was a psychologist that was in concentration camps during the Nazi occupancy. And he wrote a book in the concentration camps, and his primary point was there's all these people having the exact same experience.
Yeah.
Not the exact same, but pretty much the exact same, right?
Sure.
They're all in concentration camps, gas chambers, whatever. There's all these people having the same experience. Some are living a lot longer than others. Some are dying right away. And it has nothing to do with the actual circumstances of them getting gassed or something. It has to do with their own mental attitude.
Mm-hmm.
And he talked about several things with this, but his primary purpose in writing the book was to talk about how drastically different somebody's experience was based on what was going on up here.
Yeah.
He said several things that I thought were really interesting. Number one, he said one of the worst things that people had was hope, which I thought was fascinating.
That is very interesting.
And here's the example he gave. If somebody went into a concentration camp and they had the hope and they thought, I'm going to get out by Christmas, what happens on December 26th?
You get let down.
And a lot of those people just gave up or killed themselves
Right.
after that because expectations weren't met, right? Viktor Frankl himself wrote the entire book when he was in there. Nazis stole it from him, the entire thing, after he was done with the entire book. He had nothing. He said one of the main reasons he was able to live through it, survive through it, and then come out of it was because his goal, his main purpose in life was to rewrite that book to help other people. He wrote it from memory when he got out of the concentration camps.
Wow.
That's what kept him going.
Dude. So it's
There's a quote, I'm going to butcher it. I heard it from Tony Robbins originally.
Yeah.
And he says something to the effect of, we don't experience life. We experience the life we focus on.
Yeah.
Because it's not about the circumstances. I've been really joyful with really shitty circumstances and really miserable with really great circumstances.
Right.
Right? You probably relate.
Totally.
But what am I focusing on? Am I focusing on all the things I'm grateful for? Am I focusing on what is going so well in my life? Am I focusing on my relationship with myself, my relationship with my higher power? Or am I focusing on the fact that, I don't know, all these shitty things that I want to focus on?
So where do you think the separating, what do you, can I ask what you believe? Like, are you religious?
As far as what goes? I wouldn't call myself religious. No. I
spiritual.
grew up in a very conservative Christian home.
Okay.
So I know the Bible really well. I was in private Christian school through high school.
Right.
Didn't go to a Christian school for college, but basically got a theology degree with everything. So I could argue the Bible with the best of them.
Wow.
I still know it really well. I don't go to church.
Yeah.
I have been on a very interesting path of my relationship with God the last several years.
Would you say that it's more? I could just give you my example of my relationship with the higher power. I would say is very energy driven, very much like you ever heard like the quantum physics type thing, where there's like we're all energies, we're all atoms, like the finest molecules, and like when you meet somebody where they're vibrating at the same speed as you, or they're that's when real relationships and good conversations. Like you ever had a friend, or you've been around somebody. This one gets me. This is actually really good. You go around somebody, and these people just drain the shit out of you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You're like, you are exhausting to be around.
Yeah.
They stress you out. You feel anxious, uneasy, and all of these weird things. That's because they're just not vibrating at the same frequency as you. You know what I mean? And that boils down to like the finest parts of us, the energy. Like there's people where you walk into a room, you could feel the room. You can sense people's emotions and the heat, the temperature, like all of these things play a role into that. As humans, I think we're more capable of feeling things than I think we really understand we are, right? That one makes the most sense to me. That version of spirituality and energy makes the most sense. But I still don't know that I'll ever be able to grasp or come to terms without some type of faith that there is an individual or a being or the universe, whatever that be of that.
Yeah, I think what I've learned about God, higher power, universe, whatever, one of the things that is similar with all of them is that I'm not the pinnacle of the universe.
You're not.
There's something above me.
Right.
Again, whether that's God, higher power, universe, it's something above me. This is very 12-steppy as well, right?
Sure.
Where like part of the steps in 12-step is that after I admit that I have a problem, I have to admit that I'm not the fucking pinnacle of the universe.
Yeah.
I have to admit that there's something above me and that I actually need help from that, and that I'm willing to give up my control and myself to give up power for that, because I don't really have the power in the first place. I don't really have the control. Otherwise, why would I be in 12-step? Why would I be doing anything else?
Right.
So, I would say that beliefs-wise, I still have very similar beliefs to a lot of what I grew up with, but it looks a lot different now because I just, this is a whole nother podcast, but, there's definitely still stuff about the church and everything else that it just is difficult for me. But in my relationship with God, which is what I'm more concerned about, I feel like what God has been doing for me the last several years is just ripping open every single box that I thought I had him crammed into. And continually saying, I'm not that small. why are you making me that small? So I feel like my higher power just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And the great thing about my higher power getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger is when it does, and I can actually admit it, then I'm like, okay, great. Then you got my back, obviously, because you're so powerful and you're so strong and you can do it.
I had a conversation with somebody about this morning about just my future and my plans and what I want to do. And he was like, it sounds very just you giving up your life to allow it to be very faith-based and very like rooted in whatever's going to happen is going to happen. And Jesus, take the wheel. You know what I mean? Like, and that's what I feel like a lot of this transition has become, kind of circling back to that, you know, with the spirituality, with the struggle and trauma. We talked about perspective, you know, allowing life to take its course and understanding that we cannot control it. You're not the center of the universe. And, you know, really just letting life, like being present, being here in the moment with you, with life, with my children, with my family, with Earth, with Mother Nature. As weird and cliche as that sounds, like the world has definitely drawn me in a direction of, you know, technology and me wanting to do things for other people. You know, the direction I chose my life and social media and the consumption of all that, like it's trapped me. And the direction that I want to go is very much so the opposite of that, of rooted in just, being wholesome with the time that I have on this planet, and knowing that I don't want to take advantage of it anymore, in a sense of not seeing it for what it is, I guess.
What a helpful spiritual teacher for me for the last several years that I don't know personally, but I've heard him speak and read his books and everything else, is Eckhart Tolle. And he is all about now.
Yeah.
One of his popular books is called The Power of Now. And he's always talking about how to just meditate in the way of can I be as present as possible. He did an Instagram post the other day where he was just talking about how he was able to be more present. I'll try that again. He did an Instagram post the other day where he was talking about how to be more present just from sitting in this chair to standing up to walking to the kitchen to getting a glass of water. And it was incredible.
Yeah.
Because he was focusing on every little element of what he did and just being as present as possible. So it wasn't even about being present with anybody else. It was just being completely present with what I'm doing right this moment.
Right.
And for me, that's been, the more I can do that, the better. Because here's the thing, man. Like, you think about this. Anytime you're in your thoughts, it's never about the present, right? Ever.
Right. You're somewhere else.
It's always the past or the future. Every single time. You literally cannot be in your thoughts about the present. It's impossible. Because even if I'm here present with you and I start thinking about something, well, maybe I'm thinking about what I'm going to say 5 minutes from now. Well, that's the future. Or maybe I'm thinking about what I just fucked up 5 minutes ago that I want to delete off the podcast. Well, that was 5 minutes ago. But anytime I'm up here, you can't be present. So it's either future and it's anxiety, or it's past and it's shame.
Or regret.
But there is no negative emotion associated with present if you can be present.
Yeah. True.
And it's so hard.
Be more present. Be more mindful. Mic drop.
I know I was holding this. I want to drop
I know. I think it's a perfect place to land this shit, because this was an amazing conversation, brother. I wish I could do more podcasts like this. I really do.
Thank you.
You know what I mean? It's so hard to find just interviewing's cool, right? And you'll know what I'm talking about when you say this. But when you find somebody where you can just, like you had said before we did this, let's just talk. Let's have a conversation and blend and mesh and go off on tangents, and you find these little nuggets. You know what I mean? There'll be some nuggets I'm taking away today for sure.
Ditto, for sure.
So I'm thankful for that, and I appreciate you coming out here and sitting with me, man.
I appreciate you having me.
Yeah,
for sure. It's been good.
I appreciate you having me too.
Yeah, exactly. It's been good. Yeah, this whole joint podcasting, I've never done it before, but I think it was fun.
It was fun, dude. I wish you could do YouTube next idea collabs
for sure
on video podcasts.
Yeah, why can't they do that?
Because they're just lame. I don't know. Because it would make too many people popular, but
it would. Yeah, that's true. Well, Austin, man, it's been a great conversation.
It has, bro.
Thanks for letting me be here and crash your studio today.
Yeah. Yeah, you can use anytime you want.
I appreciate that. Well, I know we were kind of all over the board today. Maybe too ADHD. You're probably ADHD too, I'm guessing, just based on our conversation.
That's how the best conversations go, though. It really is.
So hopefully this was really good for you guys. I hope you appreciated it. As usual, please like and subscribe. That helps us. And more importantly, what I would say is if something caught your ear today, share it with someone. If somebody popped in your mind when you were thinking about this conversation, just share it to them. Say, hey, these few minutes, go check this out. Maybe the whole episode. I don't know. But man, it was so good having you here, or having me here with you, wherever we were. Where was I? Where am I right now?
Yeah, I love it.
I don't know.
No doubt, man. Absolutely. Like I said, anytime. Thanks. Ditto.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
So until next time, derelicts, we'll see you later.